Hello, welcome to First Dog on the Moon's Spoken Cartoons. I'm Guardian cartoonist First Dog on the Moon. And this cartoon was published in The Guardian on Friday the 13th of February, and it's about my friend John Kudelka. There's a little heading at the top which reads, "My friend John has died." If we look at the first frame, we can see that I have drawn both John and me standing next to our electric bicycles, and the text above reads, "Cartoonist John Kudelka was a lovely fellow, and enthusiastically Tasmanian, brackets, in a good way, close brackets. He loved his beautiful family and was fiercely intolerant of greed and hypocrisy. Thanks to his enjoyment of mercilessly skewering buffoons, he made enemies of some truly awful people." And underneath that it says, FYI, do not make enemies of a cartoonist, especially a good one. In frame 2 you can see the cover of a book called Kudelka and First Dog's Spiritual Journey. The text reads, "In 2012, John suggested we both do a book about riding electric bikes around Tasmania, visiting whisky distilleries. We crowdsourced the whole thing. People were so keen to give us money, it was huge, hilarious fun. The book was very popular, and we often talked about reprinting or updating it, but we never got around to it. I wish we had." The cover of the book is cloth, and it's very, very satisfying, and it's a burnt umber colour, which was one of John's favourite colours, I think. And the binding is a deep red, and it has two pictures on it. One done by John, which is of me and him riding our bicycles, and one done by me, which is of him and me drinking whisky. Kudelka and First Dog Spiritual Journey, and the subheading is "In which two intrepid cartoonists bravely tour the dangerous Tasmanian whisky trail," and underneath that it says "not actually dangerous." And we spelt whiskey with an E, and we crossed that out. On to frame 3. I've put two cartoons in this frame. The first one was a cartoon by John, and the second one is a cartoon by me. Pointing to the first cartoon, the text reads, "In 2012, John should have won a Walkley for this cartoon, but that was the year I won it for this cartoon," and the text is now pointing to the cartoon I did. "John always claimed that he should have won it, and he was right, but I said it was much funnier this way." John's cartoon features Julia Gillard and Chris Bowen up in a lighthouse in a terrible storm, and the light on the lighthouse is labelled "Light on the Hill," and Julia is switching it off after saying it was attracting the boats. And it's a wonderful, wonderful cartoon, one of my favourites of his. Whereas my cartoon, which was entitled Drowning, which features a dog standing on the beach talking to someone who's drowning in the sea, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it was deemed Walkley worthy by the panel, by the committee. So I've always appreciated that. John won 2 Walkleys, I've only won 1. He probably should have got more, but I'm hanging on to mine. In frame 4, the text at the top reads, "The cartoonist axis of whimsy is real. John and I would be confused with Loonig and or each other more often than either of us were comfortable with." And I've drawn someone going into the Kudelka shop. There's a sign outside the Kudelka shop with a Tassie tiger on it. A Tassie devil, in the style that John did, but not, as well as his. And the customer is saying, "Do you have any Brenda the Civil Disobedience Penguin tea towels? She's my favourite." And this customer is wearing an "I Love First Dog" t-shirt. And John is standing there wearing his "Tasmania is Terrible" t-shirt, and he says, "No." Underneath that, the text reads, "Then there was the time at the coffee shop where a wait person assumed I was John's dad. John thought this was extremely entertaining, but he was wrong." Into frame 5. I've drawn a picture of me on the phone, and the text above says, When our old border collie Roy died, the RSPCA sent flowers and a lovely card to say thanks for the work the First Dog Institute does in regard to rescue dogs, except they sent them to the Kudelka shop. And John on the phone is saying, I'll send you the card, but we're keeping the flowers. And I'm saying, thanks, John. Under that it says, even now, people on social media are very sad that First Dog on the Moon has died. John would think this was very funny, I'm sure. And the last frame. I was always jealous of how fast his beautiful brain went and how cartooning seemed so easy for him. The last text he ever sent me said, they are clowns. And he was right, of course, as always. And in this frame I put a picture from out of our whiskey book, which was drawn by John, which shows me and John cycling along, looking up at one of the beautiful landscapes that he drew. And I put a little heading, me and John as drawn by John. And underneath that it says, I will miss him dearly. Love you, John. Thank you. And that's all for this edition of First Dog on the Moon's Spoken Cartoons. Please remember to like and subscribe and all those things. Thank you very much for listening.